So, um, I'm Angela Oakes. I'm the Cost of Living Crisis Project Officer here at One Voice Wales, and I'm delighted to be your host this evening. And I'm joined with my colleagues today, Emma and Vanessa, and they'll be manning the Q&A. So, we're delighted to welcome you to this important webinar, which focuses on securing lottery grant funding for community and town councils in Wales. So at a time when our communities are facing unprecedented challenges due to the ongoing cost of living crisis, the role of local councils in providing essential support has never been more crucial. Across Wales, rising energy costs, food prices and general inflation are placing immense strain on households. And according to the Bevan Foundation, as of late 2024, nearly 4 in 10 Welsh households were struggling to afford everyday essentials. Especially vulnerable groups such as low-income families, the elderly and those living in rural areas, they are being hit the hardest. And in the face of these pressures, local initiatives really can offer a lifeline for them. From food banks and warm hubs to community gardens and digital inclusion projects, the work of town and community councils can have a direct and lasting impact on residents' well-being. However, these projects require funding, and that's where lottery grants can play a transformative role. Securing external funding not only enables councils to launch and sustain valuable services, but also empowers communities to take ownership of local challenges and develop grassroots solutions that are both innovative and responsive to real needs. So today's session, we'll be exploring how councils can successfully apply for national lottery funding, what kind of projects are most likely to receive support, and the practical steps you can take to increase the chances of success. We'll also hear from councils who've already accessed funding and have seen the difference this can make on the ground. So together we can ensure that every opportunity to support our communities is fully realised. We're pleased to be joined today by several guest speakers, including councils that have, as I said, already made great progress in this area. And these include today Rachel Richards from the National Lottery Community Fund, and she'll be walking us through the current grant opportunities available, along with practical advice on how to strengthen your application and boost your chances of securing funding. We'll also be joined by Kerry Lee Grabham, Clerk at Mumbles Community Council, who'll be sharing the inspiring story behind their successful grant bid and how it helped bring their vibrant community garden project to life. And then we'll also be joined by Delith Jones, Community Development Officer at Llanelli Town Council, who will be highlighting how her team has successfully secured funding for a wide range of impactful projects and what others can learn from their approach. So we really are looking forward to hearing their insights and experiences. So if I can firstly hand over to Rachel Richards from the National Lottery Community Fund. Good evening, Rachel.
Hi, good evening. I'll just bear with me while I share my screen so you've got some context to what I'm talking about. That should be sharing now. Yeah. So to give you, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you all today about the funding that we have available from the National Lottery Community Fund. My name is Rachel Richards and I'm the funding manager in Mid and West Wales, and I also have responsibility for the People and Places programme. So to give you a bit of background, the National Lottery Community Fund is the largest non-statutory community funder in Wales. We distribute money raised by the National Lottery players to thousands of organisations across Wales each year. There's other National Lottery distributors, and they are the Arts Council of Wales, the National Lottery Heritage Fund and Sport Wales. But as you can see, we deliver 40% of that funding in Wales. So in June 2024, we launched our new strategy, It Starts with Community, and that set out our direction of travel as a funder until 2030. And it details our ambition to deliver our funding to strengthen society and improve lives across the UK. We have 4 community-led missions, which include supporting communities to come together, supporting communities to be environmentally sustainable, helping children and young people thrive, and enabling people to live healthier lives. And we'll be applying a sharper focus on tackling inequality, meaning we'll focus more on the places, people and communities who experience poverty, disadvantage and discrimination in Wales. We'll also be supporting environmental action across all of our funding. So we'll be looking to invest in environmental sustainability and supporting projects to consider the environment, even when that isn't their main focus. So there's three hallmarks of the strategy. We're looking to make a bigger difference in the years ahead by listening and responding to communities and by focusing on supporting bolder change. So our strategy is therefore built around 3 hallmarks: strengthening our grassroots community funding, being bolder in pursuit of change, and building on the success of National Lottery stories. So we have a presence across Wales at a local level, putting people and communities centre stage in everything we do. Our teams are structured across 3 regions. We have the North Wales, Mid and West Wales, and South East and Central Wales regions. And this means that there is a dedicated funding officer who looks after each county in Wales, and has that funding officer then has strong local knowledge, which means that we have a greater understanding and a better insight into the emerging needs of those communities. So at the moment, we have 3 main grant programmes that are available in Wales. They're always open and there's no deadlines for applying to these programmes. So you've got National Lottery Awards for All and the People and Places programme, which is split between a medium grant and a large grant. So I'll first talk you through the National Lottery Awards for All programme. This currently offers grants between 300 and 20,000 for projects lasting up to 2 years. In terms of eligibility, you'll need to ensure that the following is in place. We only fund groups or organisations to run projects. So if you're a voluntary or community group, not an incorporated organisation wanting to apply for our funding, you need to be constituted and have a written constitution or governing document, and that sets out the rules on how your organisation is run. You must have a committee or board with at least 2 unrelated members. That means people who aren't family members or who live at the same address. You must have a UK bank account in your organisation's name, and make sure that at least 2 unrelated people are needed to transfer money from the account. And for your yearly financial accounts, we want to know the date your accounts wrap up each year and how much income you have. And you'll also be asked to provide a copy of your latest accounts. And these can be accounts that you do yourselves as a committee or from some that have been prepared by an accountant. So Awards for All is our small and simple grant programme. As I mentioned, there's no deadline and you can put an application in at any time. And it's our most popular grant programme as well, because we have over 80% of grants that we give out under this Awards for All programme of 20,000 or less. And they are there to support community activity by small grassroots groups. The programme can fund what we call project grants. So the application needs to be for specific projects with a start date and an end date. And unfortunately, under the main priorities for the programme, we aren't able to fund core costs. Organisations will only be able to hold 1 Awards for All grant at a time. And if they are currently in receipt of an open Awards for All grant, then they'd need to wait for that one to finish before being able to submit a new application. The application form itself is an online one and it's available on our website, and it's very short and simple. And there is a version available to print out for anyone unable to complete the online form as well. Then once we've received your application, you will receive our decision within 12 weeks. So the Awards for All programme is open to applications for projects that include a clear community element. The project must also meet at least one of our 3 main priorities. So these are to improve places and spaces that matter to communities, to bring people together and build strong relationships in and across communities, to help more people to fulfill their potential by working to address issues at the earliest possible stage. And as part of those priorities, we are looking to support people, communities and organisations facing more demands and challenges because of the cost of living crisis. So when you're developing a project, it's also important that you involve your community in the design, development and delivery of those activities that you're planning. So we ask you to tell us how you've done this in the application form, because we believe that it will help your project to be better supported by the energy and strengths that exist within your community, and it's more likely to be successful as a result. And by community, we mean the people that are living in your local area, or maybe people who share a common interest, or maybe people who experience similar barriers and issues. So I've got here a couple of examples of some Awards for All funding that we've awarded recently. Ystalyfera Community Council in Newport Talbot used their grant of $15,830 to fund timber trail equipment and a climbing wall to encourage outdoor activities and support better physical and mental well-being for children in the area. This project met two of the programme priorities. It met bringing people together and helping people to reach their potential. It would bring older children and their parents to the parks and would allow more children to use that play area, thus increasing physical activity and socialisation. So the council had carried out public consultations through SurveyMonkey to find out what people wanted in the community, and play equipment for older children was high on the number of people's lists. And that's where a timber trail and climbing wall was suggested. Holyhead Town Council, a different type of project, they used their grant of $20,000 to host a Night of Lights event. And they held a series of sessions with various groups leading up to that to create effects for the night, such as UV board art, creating lanterns and tree painting. This project met the priority of bringing people together. It would help foster community relationships and provide opportunities for local people to add to the event. They involved various groups such as people with dementia, schools, youth clubs, elderly groups. The town council themselves spoke to a number of individuals to understand their preferences and needs from the community events. And volunteers were helped then with the organisation and facilitation, and they contributed time, skills and resources. Community members were also then involved in the decision making to ensure that the project reflected the aspirations of the community. Cairn Community Council then in Wrexham were awarded £20,000 as well to deliver a project to reduce antisocial behaviour, to enhance community cohesion and to tackle isolation. This funding enabled them to employ a part-time community development officer to deliver a range of projects. They included engaging with primary school children through local sports clubs and community groups. They delivered antisocial behaviour workshops, and that led to youth-led community litter picks to foster a sense of ownership and responsibility. They also held community volunteer events to encourage local residents to organise volunteer-driven events to combat isolation, poverty and fuel poverty. So this project met the priorities of bringing people together and building strong relationships in and across communities. And it met the priority around helping people to reach their potential. They'd consulted with 100 stakeholders and over 200 community members through surveys, feasibility studies, and through face-to-face discussions. And the project was developed through the feedback that identified a need for community-led solutions. And now move on to the People and Places programme that offers grants between £20,001 and £500,000, and it's split into two strands. The medium grants are up to 100,000, and then larger grants are over 100,000 up to 500,000, and both can fund projects lasting up to 5 years long. So the eligibility for People and Places is very similar to the Awards for All. In the applicants must be a non-profit group, be constituted and have a UK bank account and annual accounts. However, with this one, there is a need for there to be 3 unrelated adults on the committee rather than the 2 that's under Awards for All. So under People and Places 4, we want to fund projects that work closely with people and communities in Wales that help issues that matter most to your community and who are accessible to the community. By community, we mean people who share an identity, interest or experience, or people living in the same place. So we're looking for projects who involve the community in the project development, design and delivery. Being community-led means involving the people who will benefit in the design and delivery of projects. That includes the people that take part in your project, their networks such as family, friends and carers, and the wider community that your organisation works in. They will need to make sure that you're not only including those who currently benefit from your services, but also people in the wider community who could potentially benefit from your new project. There are many ways to get your community involved in your project, and it will look different for different projects, remembering that one size doesn't fit all. Some groups send out questionnaires, some run focus groups, some go knocking on doors in the community or undertake surveys. Others get people together for a cup of tea and a chat. The important thing to us is that you get people involved in a way that means that you hear them. We're flexible with how you talk to the community, and we're also realistic as to how that evidence from your community consultation looks in applications. But what's important to us is that we need to see that the community has been involved in developing the project. And that's the case for all of our grant programs. So you should use techniques that work best for you. So try to remember to reach different groups of people in the community, such as children and young people, older people, the people you know well. And it's important that you do reach out and talk to people that don't already use your services or access any of your activities. And remember to ask open questions as well, giving people the opportunity to put ideas forward to shape your project. What we want to see from you is that you have a good understanding and relationship with the people in your community, are aware of the priorities and the concerns of your community, and that your project then is responsive to people's needs, and that it builds on the skills, experience and strengths in your community. In terms of building on strengths and experiences in the community, we want to encourage people and communities to think about what strengths they have, how they can use them, and develop those strengths to make changes for both themselves and the community. So it means focusing on the skills, assets and energy that people can draw upon. And what we say is that every person can add value and have something to offer, such as talent, abilities, relationships, skills, or knowledge. They may have previously experienced challenges that your project idea intends to address, such as debt, isolation, alcohol misuse. Having those with lived experience directly involved in the project is an example of building on strengths. And we also ask what organisations, activities or services are already available in your community and how you will work to fill the gap that's there. We also ask that you have a good understanding of what others are doing locally, and that the activities and services that already exist in the community, and that what you're looking to do complements and adds to that rather than duplicating, and that you have a good working relationship with other relevant groups. So you need to consider, we also ask that you consider your project's impact on the environment. For example, if you need to organise travel, you could use a minibus or cut down on pollution, maybe instead of everyone travelling separately by car. Also highlighted on our website under the People and Places programme web pages is details of our Strengths Checker. This is a free online tool which will help you as an organisation to not only identify your own strengths, but also areas within the organisation that may need some support to develop and improve. Areas such as maybe marketing, monitoring, fundraising, maybe some business planning or organisational sustainability. The results of that strengths check are personal to you as an organisation. We don't receive a copy, but I would suggest that if you are considering an application to us under the People and Places programme, you do make use of the tool, because if there's any areas of development that you may identify, whether it's project related or even if it's wider organisation related, the cost of a consultant or such thing to work with you to address that can be included within the funding that you ask for us through an application. So the People and Places Medium Grant is for projects looking for funding up to 100,000 for up to 5 years. Initially, we ask that you take a look at the guidance materials that are available on our website. So under this programme, we can fund a new or an existing project. We can help you fund the work to help you plan a project that has land or building work. And then we can fund capital costs such as land, buildings, vehicles, or refurbishments. Once you've done all your consultation and you've engaged with the community to design the project, We ask that you contact us by phone or email to discuss the idea. You'll be put through to a funding officer that covers your geographical area, and it's a chance for us to give you advice and support and let you know whether it's something we may or may not fund. So the type of information you need to have to hand for that call includes information as to what you'd like to do, details of how you're already involving your community, how you intend to deliver that project, and also how you'll consider your project's impact on the environment. If we think it's something we may fund and that you are ready to proceed, we'll send you an application form, and we ask that you send that back to us within 15 weeks. And then once we've received the application, you'll get a decision from us within 15 weeks after that as well. So an example of a medium people and places project we've recently funded is this one with Llanarmon and Lal in Community Council. They received a grant of just over 91,000 to create a large outdoor physical activity and play area to improve access by installing disabled equipment, as well as upgrading the surrounding surfaces to make them suitable for less able people, in particular people in wheelchairs, mobility scooter users, pushchair users. They also include landscaping and raised beds, and that would encourage pollinators and wildlife to the park, and also broaden the ecosystem and improve biodiversity. The impact of this project is that it would enable the community as a whole to access a facility, which will then improve their physical and mental well-being. To evidence a need for this project, a timeline of events was provided which showed how the project has evolved and demonstrated a community-led approach. The council invited volunteers to give play improvement ideas, and they engaged people in the decision-making to build a community vision of the playing field and the plans to achieve that. And that consultation process included discussions at meetings which were open to the public, posting on notice boards, on WhatsApp pages, and distributing survey forms. So the People and Places Large grant is for projects then looking for larger scale funding from 101,000 to 500,000 for up to 5 years. And again, with this one, we want to fund projects that work closely with people and communities in Wales. And we're looking for projects that are accessible to their community. And that the project should then help with issues that matter most to the community. So you can apply for funding to help your organisation change and adapt to challenges in the community, to buy land, buildings and vehicles, or maybe pay for refurbishments. What we usually say is that it would usually take around 40 weeks from when you first contact us to talk through the project idea to finding out whether you are successful in an application. To apply, you'd need to have contact with us for an informal chat again about the project idea, and again with the funding officer for your geographical area. If you're eligible, the funding officer will send an email with a link to an online ideas form. And then there's a link as well to the full list of questions on the application form on our website for you to have a look before you even contact us. We'll also let you know whether you're invited through to stage 2 within 6 weeks of applying. If you're invited through to stage 2, this again is an online form and you'll receive a link from the funding officer. And again, there's a link to that full list of questions on our website. After submitting your stage 2 application, we will then let you know the decision within 16 weeks. So this is an example of a large People and Places grant that we funded recently to Mumbles Community Council. They received a grant of over 271,000, and it was to construct a skate park which incorporated areas for young children, beginners and experts, as well as scooters, a BMX track and wheelchair tracks and ramps. The project will improve opportunities for people of all ages and abilities, but especially for young people, and will support activities that will improve physical and mental well-being in the community. So to recap on the People and Places programme, the medium grant offers funding between 20,000, medium grant offers funding up to 20,000 and 100,000. It's a one-stage application and decisions will be made within 15 weeks of applying. The People and Places Large grant offers funding between 101,000 and 500,000. Is a 2-stage application and can take around 40 weeks from first contacting us to receiving a decision. So in September 2024, that's September last year, we refreshed the People and Places programme, and a new part of that programme is around the 4 priority areas that are set out in our new strategy, and that's the focus of our funding across the UK now going forward. These 4 community-led missions are supporting communities to come together. So we're looking for things like connections with friends, neighbours, people with shared interests and experiences. These connections also bind communities together. They create networks and power to lead action and shape change. Supporting communities to help children and young people to thrive. So looking at community activities, experiences and support, they're transformative in supporting children, young people and their families to thrive. So we look for every child and young person should have access to the support of trusted adults, enriching activities and opportunities to connect with others. The third priority is around supporting communities to enable people to live healthier lives. And we're looking to invest in communities that foster well-being and good physical and mental health. And then supporting communities to be environmentally sustainable. So obviously we understand that climate change is the most pervasive threat to the natural environment and societies the world has ever experienced. And while many environmental challenges are global, there is a huge potential for UK communities to make a difference locally. And we'll be looking to embed support for environmental action across all of our funding, including supporting all projects to consider the environment, even where that is not their main focus. So in terms of equality, diversity and inclusion and equity, we expect your organisation and the activities we fund to be open and accessible to promote equalities and challenge discrimination. So you can include costs to help your project be more accessible to your community in your proposed budget to us. So in the application form now, we'll ask how you'll reach underrepresented groups in your community. And by underrepresented groups, we mean groups that focus on representing the needs of older people, disabled people, women, ethnically minoritized people, faith-based communities, LGBTQ+ people, and rural communities. And we'd like to understand your approach to equality, equity, diversity, inclusion. And we may ask to see your organisation's equalities policy as part of our assessment. So as mentioned, we also want to fund organisations that consider their impact on the environment. And you do not have to be a climate or environment focused organisation to apply. So everyone who delivers charitable services or runs a community venue can make choices to create a positive environmental impact, be that saving energy and money, reducing waste and cutting carbon emissions. We've created some practical tips as a starting point for any charity or community group looking to co-create an environmental action plan. And there's links on our website showing the benefits of having an environmental action plan and sharing ideas of what you could include, alongside examples from our grant holders showing how they've made their plans and the difference that these are helping them to make. So creating an environmental action plan helps you embed low carbon behaviours across your organisation's work. It should set out your environmental objectives, assign responsibilities, and explain how you will monitor progress. In the People and Places application form, there's a specific question around the environment, and we want you to tell us about the steps you've taken to reduce negative impacts on the environment, or even how you've had a positive impact. It could be through things such as reducing your travel, waste, or energy use. As with all our funding, we also want people in Wales to access the projects we fund in the language that they need. So therefore, we should make sure that people can access and engage with the project in both English and Welsh. And if you receive funding from us to deliver a project in Wales, you will need to do so bilingually in line with the fund's Welsh language standards. We look for projects to offer services in both Welsh and English, and that is a term and condition of the grant. And it's important to think of how you're going to deliver the project bilingually before you submit your application, as you can include any costs associated with that within your project budget. And finally, as funding officers and funding managers, we're here to help you. And if there's anything at all you're not sure about or want to have a further chat about, please do get in touch, and my details are on the screen there for you. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank
Is there any questions?
Thank you, Rachel. You jumped in there. I was just going to ask if there were any
Yeah.
questions from anyone. Really informative presentation, Rachel. Lots and lots of information. We've had someone ask whether we'll be sharing slides, and I presume that would be okay to do so.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, lots of information on there, so fantastic. So we have one question in the chat actually, and then if anyone else has any questions for Rachel, please either raise your hand, or if you want to pop something in the chat, then we'll pick that up for you instead. So the question we have is from Mabin Thomas, and she asks, if we have an Awards for All grant, can we still apply for a People and Places grant?
Yeah, you can. The only stipulation is with Awards for All is that we say you can only have one of those grants at a time. But if you do have an Awards for All grant, you can apply for People and Places at the same time, and vice versa as well. So, and you know, there is the option as well. You know, there's nothing to say that you can't hold a People and Places Medium and a People and Places Large as well at the same time. But obviously, we do start looking at capacity to manage several grants at a time. But it is possible to hold more than one.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rachel. Do we have any other questions? Michelle Moore asks, is there an application form for stage 1?
Yes, there is. You'd need to contact us and have a chat with the funding officer first to go through your project idea. And it's more so that we can give you some tips and guidance on how you could strengthen that application. And then once you've had that conversation, the funding officer will forward a link to the online application for you. So we don't have them available online because we do like to have a chat with you first, just to make sure that you know you've got a good understanding of what we're looking for in an application.
That's great. Thanks, Rachel. So is there anyone who's attended today who's thinking of applying for lottery funding, if they have a project in the pipeline that they think that their community may need? Is there anyone who's considering applying for a grant? If there is, we'd love to hear from you. Anyone? No? No, I mean, some great examples shared, Rachel, you know, both of some of the smaller grants people have received and obviously the larger ones as well. And it's really lovely to hear the impact that has made on the communities as well. So in terms of applying for the grant, so obviously there's a process, but how sometimes we hear from smaller councils who think that they may not qualify for those grants, but obviously that's not the case. Do you get lots of applications from the smaller councils, or does it tend to be the bigger ones?
No, we get from all size councils and from across Wales, yeah, from your very, very small community councils to your larger town councils. Yeah, and all are eligible as long as they meet our, I mean, town councils and community councils would be meeting our eligibility criteria anyway, in terms of how they're set up.
Yeah. Fantastic, thank you. So Carrie Townsend Jones says, we are Cornley Community Council, and they're currently looking at, are you looking at setting up a skate park, or have you received funding for that, Carrie? Be interesting to just get a little bit more detail on that.
I'm sorry, there's sort of multiple me's, and actually it wasn't me.
Oh, okay. Have you shared the link with someone, Kerry?
When I registered, I think it somehow sort of made everybody my name.
Oh, okay. Not quite sure how that happened.
One of the alternative Carrie Townsend Joneses who asked the question.
Okay, so if you're not the real Carrie Townsend, if you maybe would like to change your name in the top right-hand corner, that might be quite useful. But yeah, interesting to know whether you're in the process of applying or whether that's something you've already received funding for. So again, thanks Rachel for a very informative presentation. Lots of information there for councils to take on board. Obviously, with the handouts, when they receive those as well, they can go back and look at the details of your presentation. And if anyone is, of course, thinking of applying for grant funding, then I'm sure if you contact the funders, they'll be able to clarify any points for you.
I'm happy for you to contact me through my contact details, and I can pass you on then to the relevant funding officer for your geographical area as well.
Great stuff, lovely. So if I can, I'll pop those in the chat, Rachel, unless you want to, and then that'd be great. Thank you very much. So I think there's no more questions for you. Great stuff, lovely. So next of all, we're going to move on to Kerry Lee Grabham, who incidentally you mentioned in your presentation, Mumbles Community Council. They've been very successful in receiving grant funding. So Kerry, welcome this evening.
Okay, thank you. So good evening, everybody. I'm Kerry, clerk to Mumbles Community Council, which means if something needs doing, chances are I've already been volunteered for it. So this evening, I'm here to talk about successful grant applications, because believe it or not, convincing strangers to give you thousands of pounds is actually a skill. It's less about fancy words and more about making them fall in love with your project faster than a teenager falls for a boy band. So if you're ready to make your funders swoon, we'll get started. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So after securing over £327,000 in lottery grants, strong applications don't happen by accident. Grant applications are like dating profiles for projects. You've got to look good on paper and also promise long-term commitment. A winning application is like a good story. It hooks the funder from the start, it shows clear purpose, and it leaves them feeling like they just have to be a part of your project. This evening, I'll walk you through what funders look for and share the lessons and mistakes that we learned and have got us to where we are today. So as I've said, since 2021, strong grant applications have helped us turn unloved corners of Mumbles into places people actually want to visit, including our most recent project, Jubilee Gardens, which went from an overgrown jungle to a secret garden sanctuary, all with a bit of charm, a lot of planning, and some caffeine-fueled writing sessions. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so core ingredients for success. Winning grants is like baking. You need to have the right ingredients involved. So the right ingredients we consider are matching the funders' priorities, showing real community need, which we mean not just asking your mum if she thinks it's a good idea, having a plan that doesn't sound like a wish list, and promising a future that not just a grand opening party. Getting this mix right and your project will rise beautifully instead of collapsing in the oven. Sorry, next slide, please. Okay, so you must make sure you have a clear purpose and alignment to the funders. Sorry, can't get my words out. Have a clear purpose and alignment to your funders' not objections. I can't get my words out. So basically what I'm trying to say is funders want to fund your projects. So in our application for Jubilee Gardens, we made it crystal clear that we were saving mental health, biodiversity and heritage access. We were speaking the funders' language by using words like sustainability, inclusion, well-being, and all the buzzwords that back them with action. So the moral of the story is, if a funder reads your application and think, finally, someone who gets us, then you're halfway there. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So funders don't want to fund mysteries. They want to know when, how, and even who's carrying the wheelbarrow. So for Jubilee Gardens, we gave them the full Netflix mini-series worth of detail. So we gave them the site clearing plans, planting schemes, volunteer recruitment. And because if you don't tell them exactly how you're going to do it, they assume you're going to wing it, and winging it doesn't get you funded. So as you can see on the slide here, we've mentioned a couple of points. So your objectives need to be smart, clear milestones, timelines and deliverables, future proofing, and also a clear management plan with evaluation included. Can I have the next slide, please? So funders have a sixth sense for spotting fake community engagement. And in our Jubilee Gardens project, we didn't just say the community loves it, we actually asked them first. So Jubilee Gardens is a project that we've undertaken in conjunction with Clanfair House, which is a house that helps support people with mental health recovery. So they actually contributed to the design of the garden, gave us a lot of feedback, and have also helped with the work that we've undertaken by having a couple of volunteering days down there doing some planting for us. We also spoke to local neighbours, because Jubilee Gardens actually is attached to somebody's house, and it's, if you've ever been to Mumbles, you'll know it's on the prom, and it was quite overgrown to begin with. So obviously the neighbours gave us some feedback, and it's really, when you have genuine people involved, it shines through in your application and it saves you from awkward public meetings later. Can I have the next slide, please? So you need to prove need and urgency. So funders want to fix real problems, not just upgrade already lovely things that you may have in your community. So we showed them how Jubilee Gardens wasn't just a bit messy, it was a full before photo. It was completely overgrown, neglected, inaccessible and overrun. There was huge community demand for green, safe healing space. So if your project feels urgent to the funder, it's likely to jump to the top of their list. So the next slide, please. So you need to obviously deliver sustainability and long-term impact. So funders just don't want to babysit your project. They want to fund it once and then watch it thrive like proud parents. So we showed how Jubilee Gardens would be maintained by volunteers and Clanfair House residents, would also be used to run occupational health sessions with the Clanfair residents there, and also educational experiences for the local schools. We built with low maintenance plants to assist the residents in Clanfair House to make sure that the activities they can undertake there are actually achievable, and also included eco-tech like SUDS. So when I say SUDS, I mean sustainable drainage systems, and we in Jubilee Gardens included a rainwater garden. We are also aiming to target the green flag, because obviously we would love another shiny certificate to add to our wall, and if you plan your say in for the long haul, your application becomes more irresistible to the funders. Next slide, please. So you need to show value for money, and that you've also considered your risk management as well. So funders are basically accountants, but with big hearts, and they love a long list of community benefits for every £1 spent. A plan that should say, we thought about everything that could go wrong, and we have a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D. So at Jubilee Gardens, we factored in the unpredictable Welsh weather could ruin a planting day. We also had to factor in the change of staff in the middle of the application, because our environmental officer who started the project left in the middle, and we went through a recruitment phase and then brought in a new environmental officer. So you need to be sensible, but also don't forget, a little humour reminds your assessors that you're human too. So the next slide, please. So emotional storytelling, what do I mean by this? So remember, it's stories that sell. And although funders may love spreadsheets and numbers, it's the stories that really get them to open the checkbook. So at Jubilee Gardens, we didn't just list pollinator-friendly species. We shared how much value it would bring to one of the residents to say it would be great to be back outdoors and connect with the ground again. Telling your funder a story, and remember that they're ploughing through hundreds of applications, will make yours stand out, especially if you include little snippets from real life. Okay, next slide, please. So my top tip for writing winning applications, so make sure you do your homework on your project and then you mirror the funder's priorities and make sure you use the buzzwords and correct language. Ask the community about your project, not just your dog or your mum or your neighbour. Make sure you can demonstrate that you've undertaken meaningful community engagement. So map your project out and include that plan in your application, like you read in a piece of IKEA flat pack with clear instructions, but ensure you've got no missing screws there. So a plan for life after funding. What do I mean by this? So once you've got the funding, it isn't just about posting your photos and submitting your feedback to the lottery. It's showing them how the lasting impact of the project will carry on after the project is being completed. And always, always, always be realistic about your risks. It's 90% good old-fashioned planning, and 10% is always about mitigation. So I've got some bonus sneaky insider tips for you as well. And if you really want to charm a grant panel, here's what one of our own counsellors advised me, who actually accesses grants. And this is what she says you must do. So you must tell a story and ensure your story is kept logical. You want the assessor to keep on flipping the pages eagerly and not just sighing heavily. So address all the funders' priorities or explain why you can't. Assessors have checklists, so make their lives easy. Read carefully for contradictions. Nothing screams, I've rushed this application, like a budget for five benches, but a narrative that speaks about 10. Stick to eligible costs and make sure the prices add up, but just be vague enough to survive rising costs without looking clueless. And get an outsider to proof it, because what makes sense to you at 1 a.m. with caffeine-fueled eyes won't make sense to somebody else when they're reading and trying to assess your application. So the final thoughts for me, can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Grants aren't just about money, they're about building trust. So if you tell a strong story and prove you can deliver it, you'll make the funder feel like they're part of something meaningful. Do that and you'll be turning love spaces into community treasures before you know it. So we actually had the soft opening of Jubilee Gardens today, and I believe the lottery assessor was over there as well, because we were being assessed on one of our other applications today, which just happens to be across the road from Jubilee Gardens. So we do actually have a grand opening planned for Monday, the 28th of April. And if you'd like to come along and see how we've transformed the space, we're more than happy to welcome you to the opening. Thank you so much for listening to me. As you could probably tell, I'm quite nervous and I do speak quite fast. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you've got any tips you'd like to share with me, I'd like to open the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kerry. That was such a fantastic presentation, so much information in there and some real behind the scene tips and insights as well, which I'm sure lots of people are keen to hear of at the moment. So yes, if anyone has got any questions for Kerry, they sound like they definitely know what they're doing at Mumbles. So, do take this opportunity to ask those questions while we have Kerry in front of us. Again, pop them in the chat, or if you want to raise your hands, we'll come to you. So just out of interest, Kerry, what's the other application that you've currently submitted? What's that one for?
So it's a project that's just been finished. So that's Norton Nature Reserve. So that was a project that was started before I joined the Community Council, and it's obviously we're coming to the end of the assessing period. So the assessor was there today. Carrie, the real Carrie Townsend-Jones, so we call her, has been on council for a good few years, so she could probably answer more questions in depth on that, because she was part of the process behind that project.
Fantastic. Well, I'm hoping it's the real Carrie Townsend-Jones who's got a hand raised. So Carrie, if you'd like to ask your question. Yeah,
it's not so much a question, just to really add what to what Kerry has said. We're very lucky in Mumbles. It's a lovely place, but there's lots of bits of it that just are kind of sitting there doing nothing, and having the opportunity to apply for lottery funding is fantastic. And we had the external evaluator down, as Kerry said. coming to look at Norton Nature Reserve, which was a project we started, literally got approval for just before lockdown. So it had quite a lot of hiccups along the way because of obviously not being able to proceed and things. You know, it was great to be able to have someone come down and have a look at how we overcame those problems. And that's something I will say in your applications, be aware, you know, and write in those things about what happens if it goes wrong. Because, you know, it all went horribly wrong at Norton Nature Reserve because of COVID. But now it's a fabulous project. You saw some pictures there on Kerry's presentation, and you know, people absolutely love it. So, you know, don't be put off if things start going wrong. And I will say the lottery are really, really helpful. You know, if you do have problems or things aren't working out as you wanted it to, they are really, really helpful. Just contact them, talk to them about it. And, you know, we found them really supportive. So, you know, do use them. Don't think, you know, because something goes wrong in your project that you've just got to give up, because, you know, they're looking for solutions as well as you. Okay, thanks.
Lovely. That's really sound advice, Carol. Thanks for sharing that. And you know, congratulations on the achievements there at Mumbles. Garden looks fabulous, and you know, best of luck with the launch date. I'm sure it'll be really well attended. Bit jealous, really. I'm all the way up in North Wales. I'd have loved to have come along and had a look at it myself. So we have a question from Carol Roberts. So Carol, if you want to come in. There we go. So Carol's question, Carol says she's new to grant funding, and she asks, did you receive all the funding for the project, or do you have to match fund?
So we match fund. It's always beneficial to put match funding into your application. It strengthens your application with the funder, whichever funder you're applying through.
That's great, thank you. Quick question for you, Rachel, actually. If a council is unable to match funds, are they still able to apply for any grant funding from yourselves?
Yeah, we can actually fund 100%. So there isn't an actual requirement to get match funding for any of our funding. We do fund 100%. Obviously, if you can, to reduce the ask on us, great, because obviously our budget is not ever ending and it is very competitive. You know, for example, you know, we have applications to the value of 5.2, 5.5, 5.8 million sometimes for a large decision meeting with a budget of around 3.2, 3.43 sometimes. So that kind of shows a competitiveness, you know, about 50% for projects can get funded. So great if you can find match funding, but if you can't, we are able to fund 100% match, 100% project costs.
That's great. Thanks for clarifying that for us, Rachel. Thank you. Michelle Moore asks, how long did it take to receive funding? So I presume that's to you, Kerry.
Yeah. So, for example, our larger application with the skate park, funny enough, we just actually received some of that funding this week, because that is paid obviously over the project life that you apply for, and it's paid in tranches. The Jubilee Gardens, we were successful in obtaining £15,000. We had £7,000 first of all, and then we've got to submit the rest of our receipts now to claim the rest of it. So we started this application back last year, and I think it was about
September.
I was going to say even earlier than that, because we had to factor in Lydia leaving.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because the application was written by Lydia with my support, and then we had to factor in Lydia decided she was going to pursue a master's, so she actually left us. So we had a recruitment process in the middle of the after being told we'd been successful. So again, we had to contact the lottery and just explain what was happening. And you know, as I said, Carrie mentioned before, the lottery were extremely supportive. And then obviously we were advised to think about, we knew we were successful and that we needed to get the project up and running and moving pretty quickly. And we had until the 27th of March to complete the project.
So Michelle asks, so was it around the 40 weeks before you had the news that you've received the funding when the application was put in?
No, it was a shorter timescale because it was in the smaller side of the grant applications from the National Lottery.
Okay, great stuff. Harry, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just to come in, it does depend on which fund you're applying for. Two of our projects, the Norton Nature Reserve and the Jubilee Gardens, were single application projects. I suppose we heard within about 12 weeks.
Okay.
The skate park, which was around £250,000, was what's called the two-stage application. So that took considerably longer because you have to put in your stage 1 application. That has to then be assessed, and only then are you then invited to continue with stage 2, and you have another period of time before you have to submit your stage 2 application, and then that can take obviously some months to be assessed and a decision to come out. So I can't remember offhand with the skate park because there was a few hiccups along the way, but it with various issues which I won't go into, but which did require some nifty footwork at times to get over. But I was it 40 weeks? I don't know if it was that long. And for the question Carol Roberts asked, yes, you can, as long as you have a written agreement from the landowner. The skate park site that we have belongs to Swansea Council, and they gave us permission, and we have it on I think it's a 25-year lease. Is that right, Kerry? Yeah.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you for that. Rachel, you've got your hand raised there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of our funding, certainly under People and Places, when you apply to us for funding, you say the project is going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 years. If you sort of generate underspend during that time when you're delivering it, we have got the option to extend beyond that if need be, in terms of delivery. So we can be flexible, and there isn't any, it's not sort of financially year based either. So it's not as if to say you have to use the money by a certain date. With People and Places, it's definitely flexible on that.
Fabulous. That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Rachel. So Carol, did you answer that part? The land we want to use is owned by a unitary authority. Does that affect that at all?
With us,
yes.
with us, the applicant would either need to be the landowner or an organisation that has a lease over the land. So those are the requirements for us. So if you have a lease over that land that is owned by the unitary authority, then you can apply for funding.
Okay.
Could I just add to that? You don't have to have the lease signed and sealed
No.
before you apply. You just have to have the agreement to lease ready, because obviously there would have been no point in us
entering a lease
into a lease for 25 years on a piece of land, and then we didn't get it funded. We'd have it there and we'd have no use for it. So it's you have to have that agreement from your unitary authority or local authority, but you don't actually have to have the whole thing signed and sealed.
No, it can be a letter of confirmation that they will enter into a lease agreement with you with some basic terms, or it can be a copy of a draft lease if you are at that stage. But we wouldn't expect you to enter into it until we confirmed that funding was in place with you.
That's great, thank you. So Michelle's asking, if you're applying for funding as an employee, is the funding paid in advance to pay the salary? So that's Michelle's question.
For us, with revenue funding to pay an employee, so revenue funding is paid quarterly and in advance. So say, for example, you started your project on the 1st of May, your first quarterly payment would be 2nd of May. For some reason, we can't pay the first day. So your payment would be there the 2nd of May, and then obviously May, June, July, August, your next payment would be the 2nd of August. And we generally tend to do equal quarterly payments across the year, but we can be flexible if you wanted a little bit more upfront in the first quarter to meet some additional costs for setting up the project. But yeah, revenue funding is paid in advance. Capital funding, we need to have a copy of the invoice, or if it's a big capital project, interim certificate of completion from the builders and the architects. Ideally, we tend to say if you can get at least a 21-day agreement with them for payment terms, you can generally get that invoice into us and we can get it paid out to you before you have to pay the builders. But we do need that invoice up front to be able to release that payment. But we are pretty quick with payments being released every week.
That's great. Thanks, Rachel. Gareth asks, how long of a lease would you have to have in place?
It would depend on the level of funding. So the smaller pots of funding, we expect you to have maybe 5 years in place, longer up to 25 years. It varies depending on the level of funding that you ask for.
And I presume you can give advice on that anyway, can't you, Rachel? Someone's unsure, they can come and ask a question of you. Yeah, great stuff. Okay, any more questions at all for Rachel or for Kerry or Carol? No? Is that everyone? Great, lovely. So if we could then move on to Dalith Jones at Connectly Town Council. So thanks for joining us today, Dalith. So yeah, if you just want to tell us about the successes you've had with your funding, please, Dalith, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Angela. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, everything's fine.
Great. I'm not as good as what Kerry's just done, by the way, from Mumbles. Excellent presentation, Kerry, but I thought I'd just chat to you this evening, to be honest. I thought that would be the easiest way. So I'm the principal officer in Connectly Town Council, so effectively I'm the deputy clerk in the town council, but I do have the community lead in the town council, and we're one of the largest town and community councils in Wales. So Angela's just asked for me to outline sort of like maybe some of the things that we've done in Connectly with regards to getting grants, and maybe some of the grant funders that we've been able to achieve grants from, and also maybe sort of like our role as a town community council in supporting other organisations and community groups also as well to achieve funding. So with regards to the lottery, we've had a bit of sort of like a positive sort of relationship and a number of small scale grant applications that have been successful. But we did go through a People and Places grant application as well, which was a negative application for us, which actually was quite a difficult process, if I'm honest with you, to go through, because it was over during COVID also as well, so that made it even more difficult. But that was for a facility that we were looking to do to build up in Pen y Fan in one of our parks. It was a community facility that had been ongoing for sort of like a number of years, sort of like 12 or 13 years. We've been doing some consultation up there. And I think for the community, it was important to have the facility there. We did apply for the People and Places grant, but we weren't successful. And one of the reasons why actually was because when we came out of COVID, originally going into COVID, the project was about £1 million, just short of £1 million, about 800,000 or 900,000. So this was for a community facility, sensory garden, etc. And actually, when we came out of COVID, those costs had significantly risen, and we had gone to something like 1.7 million, which, you know, we understand, isn't it, is a lot of money. And from I think it was difficult for us to be able to say, you know, to be able to cap those costs, because it did look at the time as if the costs were still rising, and we couldn't guarantee at what cost level, you know, the facility was going to come in at. And we had to go back to the community, if I'm honest, and we had to be honest with the community, to say to the community, look, we just can't raise the funding for the facility. We always had a plan B, which was up our sleeve, which was looking at a modular building. The modular building facility that we were looking at actually came in just short of 500,000. So it's a big difference from 1.7 million to 500,000. So we worked with an organisation called Wernick, who are based down in Swansea. They've done a lot of the modular building for schools, for instance. They've done some work down in Pembrey for Carmarthenshire County Council more recently. So we worked with Wernick to develop and with the community also to develop a modular building. So the modular building, actually, we're due to open in May of this year. So May the 6th to be precise. So Plan B was the one that in the end that came to fruition with us. So we weren't able to get lottery funding for that specific project. Well, we did get a lower amount. We got 16,000 to help with, just over 16,000 to help with refurbishments of, for instance, the kitchen, for instance, and the community space and garden outside also as well. But it was the community facilities programme, actually, with Welsh Government, that we actually got funding for in the end, 230,000, and we were able to match fund that ourselves also as well. And that was the second project actually that we've had funded through the community facilities programme. We'd had a previous year before, we'd had Pen y Gar community facility also as well funded for us by the community facilities programme. We found that working with Welsh Government actually really good. They've got a team in Welsh Government. We've worked directly with them. And what we found, to be honest with you, is to actually bring the team down, discuss the project with them, show them around, meet some of the people, etc. The application process was really simple to go through, well, reasonably simple to go through, and we had it agreed reasonably quickly also as well. The only problem with the community facilities programme is it's time bound, but we had issues with planning with the Pen y Fan project. We were able to work with the team to let them know we had issues with planning. Project is overrun by about 9 months. But Welsh Government have been very supportive and have been able to support us through that, if you can understand that overspend on time, because they can see actually it wasn't our, if you can understand, it wasn't our doing, it was actually Carmarthenshire County Council with the planning process. So through the facilities fund, we have now since been able to build a community facility for the community, and we've also renovated one of our community centres as well. All in all, we've got the Pen y Fan building that we're building currently at the minute is the 6th community centre that we own as a town community council. So we've been quite sort of like pleased with that. Other funding also as well that we've been pretty successful with actually is looking at it is with things like local places for nature, for instance. We've had 3 community gardens through local places for nature. And actually we've supported just recently, only last week or the week before, we've had a second school actually that's going to be having a local places for nature garden also as well, that we've been able to really successfully support also as well. So all in all, actually, essentially we'll have had 5 local places for nature gardens, which has been really good, and we've been able to support, like I say, the two schools in order to draw down that funding, and we found that process relatively easy also as well. The other one that we've been reasonably successful with, although not as successfully as we would have liked to have been, but we understand how difficult it is with funding, is the Levelling Up Fund through, and in Carmarthenshire it's called SPF. So the Levelling Up Fund, which is Westminster monies, obviously came in sort of I think it was sort of like 18 months ago, probably now. Carmarthenshire were quite successful in receiving a fair, a good chunk of, I'm not entirely sure how it was, but it was millions. And Carmarthenshire County Council set up a very fair process in organisations, isn't it, being able to come in and bid for that funding, if you can understand, through different themes. So we were successful in one of the projects that we submitted last year, which was we kind of had the project a little bit on, if you can understand, on the back shelf, because we've been doing some work with children in all of the schools. We work with 8 of the primary schools in Llanelli, and we've been doing some work with the children, and they wanted to look at, and we wanted to improve our park areas also as well. But we wanted to take more of a nature sort of like approach to it. So we created adventure playgrounds. So these are high risk adventure playgrounds, which have been designed by the children. And we were successful last year with £47,000 from SPF, local place, SPF from Carmarthenshire County Council. Very task and finish. We had to deliver the project literally in 9 months. So that was a bit of a sort of like that was the timelines on that were incredibly tight, and in fact we had a 2-month extension to February of this year when we closed the project down in February of this year. Carmarthenshire has a second round of SPF funding in currently at the minute, which is what they're calling bridging funding. But we've chosen not to apply for that funding. But what we have done is to support other organisations that are applying for the funding. So by working in partnership with others, we've been able to boost, if you can understand, their sort of chances of getting the funding also as well. Because we definitely believe as a town council that, you know, we can support other organisations to bring funds into Llanelli and make Llanelli a better community by everybody working together. So we've been quite successful in supporting a number of SPF projects. That can be as simple as providing a letter of support. It can be actually sitting on a partnership board maybe and working with them to develop the projects and looking at the needs, etc. And what we do find as town and community councils, actually, I think our weight is lent. It can be quite heavily lent. Actually, 2 applications. Actually, if a funder can see us supporting in the background, particularly if it's a smaller organisation or a community organisation that maybe doesn't have, if you can understand, the skills and the experience so much, that we find that also as well. One of the other things we've been quite successful with is creating what we call a MUGA, new MUGA, or in our case, it's actually working with the Cruyff Court World Foundation, so tackling poverty through sport. So we've been quite successful. We have the only Cruyff Court in Wales currently at the minute with us in Llanelli. And what that started actually with the Cruyff Foundation was by having the Cruyff Court in place. That started, if you can understand, the jigsaw for the rest of the park up in Pen y Fan. So we were able to secure really the and as Kerry said about building and showing that story, isn't it, that picture, and showing what else you can bring to the table is important. With the Pen y Fan project park area, we were able to show that, you know, the Cruyff Court came in and funded the Cruyff Court there at 75,000, and that was 5 years ago, and that really started, if you can understand, the jigsaw really around the Cruyff Court, and we now have a new community facility there. So, you know, there's a lot of investment that's gone into that park, probably somewhere £750,000 has gone into one sort of like park area in Llanelli to update it with a new splash pad, for instance, new biodiversity area, the new community facility, new sensory garden, the Cruyff Court, a rugby pitch and a football pitch also as well. So that's, you know, a hefty chunk, if you can understand, of investment into a location in an area. But we've done that by lots of different funding sources over a number of years. So this park, it's taken us 4 years to get to the stage probably where we're opening the new community facility in early May. So some of the other things that I mentioned earlier about working with colleagues, isn't it, and partners from the community. The Bumblebee Trust, for instance, have just been successful with a £270,000 project working, and Llanelli is going to be part of that £270,000 for the next 10 years by working in partnership with the Bumblebee Trust. So, you know, that's great opportunity for our local schools, etc., to get involved in looking at the biodiversity in our communities. other funders that we've been quite successful with, so we have a sports and youth development officer, which is Sean Thomas. Sean's been very successful working with clubs like with the football club, rugby clubs, etc., tennis club, for instance, in drawing down smaller grants and funds from organisations such as Barclays, Asda's, the Cruyff Court, the WFA, Footballer Federation, the Phil Bennett Fund and Trust, Tesco's, HSBC, and Keep Wells Tidy. So there are a number of funding organisations that we've been able to work with also as well. Some which you may think actually, you know, they'd never support a town community council, but they do. So we work very closely with organisations. You know, a good example is the Football Federation for Wales. You know, they've just recently funded some funding to us, not much, only £1,000, but it's enough to get kit, footballs, bibs, etc., for sort of like some of the schools, etc., and to promote girls' football also as well. So there's quite a lot, if you can understand there. One of the projects I'd like to highlight as well, really quickly, actually, is our democracy funding that we've had from Welsh Government. So this is looking at a project called Come and Meet the Mayor. So this is looking at democratic health, voting rights, etc., and trying to explain to the community as well how town community councils operate and the governance, structural governance in Wales actually around democracy and citizenship. So we run a project, we're in the 6th year currently at the minute, and that was funded last year by democracy funding from Welsh Government. Very small fund that not an awful lot of people know about, but that was very easily attained also as well. And again, it was less than £1,000, but it did mean that, you know, we've had over 2,000 young people through that project. So, you know, value for money in educating, etc., is vast. So I'm going to stop talking there probably, Angela, if I'm honest, and just ask if there's any questions. So I think from my perspective, it is looking at larger, more well-known funders, if you can understand, like the lottery, for instance, but then working with other funding organisations that you may not necessarily think would fund, but will. And the role of the town council, certainly with us, is to play a pivotal role in helping to draw down funding for others by working in partnership, lending our expertise or lending, you know, our officers, lending experience, helping to write applications, for instance. And I'm no fund, you know, I work together with Avon, our clerk, and we're not always successful, believe me, when we're looking at applications, and we fully understand that writing an application, particularly something like a people and places application, can be really daunting, really concerning. But there are people there like Rachel that can help, isn't it? We also have a local West Wales officer that we're in contact with, but there's some of the smaller funders you know, are prepared to sort of like look at helping and will sort of like look at working with you. So, you know, I think by working together, we can bring sort of like quite a lot of money into Llanelli, and I think that's important, really. I don't know if anybody has any questions, Angela, happy to answer.
Sure. Oh, well, thank you so much, Stella, for that very informative presentation. So much information there yet again. And what was really nice to hear was that the partnership working is a big part of the funding opportunities that you seek out in order to benefit your community. You know, we talk about this all the time, that there may be councils who don't have the funds themselves or the resources maybe to achieve the projects that they would like to have in their communities, but very often when you work with other partners, organisations, voluntary groups within your community, you can still achieve an awful lot for your community and make a huge difference. So, you know, it was great to hear you talking about the importance of that as well. There's a couple of links that Emma and Vanessa have dropped in chat as well. If anyone wants any more information on effective grant applications, One Voice Wales do offer a training module on grant applications as well. So do look at the link. So
Angela, can I just, sorry, I should have said one thing, and
Go on.
if I can just let you know also as well. As a town community council, we also have a small grants fund also as well. So on average, we fund about 23,000 pound a year to small organisations. So these are grants with us for up to £300 to £500. So sometimes we'll have an organisation, it could be the local Knit and Natter group, for instance, that will come in to us, and you know, all they want to be able to do is buy the biscuits, the tea and coffee, but to meet every week, and for it to pay maybe the local, you know, community centre or hall. So that application process with us is super simple. We do have guidance on it, and it's decided at committee level. A group has to be constituted. They have to have a bank account, etc. So that independency has to be there. But also as well is that it's a really simple process. In it's just a letter to the town council requesting financial assistance. So we have found that that works really as well for some smaller organisations that maybe are just looking for a few £100 to, you know, to get going, or and sometimes that's all a community group needs, because we do find we've got organisations that will go for lots and lots of money, big funds, and then and with some organisations and community groups that terrifies the life out of them, and people lose sleep. So we do find lots of organisations, our smaller organisations actually are quite happy, you know, with £300, £400, £800, etc. We can go to that amount if the members choose. So we do have a grant scheme within the town council as well. That can also be used as small scale match funding as well, if they wish also as well.
Thanks for sharing that. It's quite a lot of money really that you offer out, isn't it, to other community groups as well, so that's great. Kerry mentions in the chat there, Kerry says, first of all, Mumbles has a similar programme. They have 25,000 available this year for local groups to apply for, so that's great to hear. And Kerry adds, thanks Delith, very inspiring, great tips about other sources of funding. Yeah, that's really interesting. Just touching on that, Delith, I take it your council's been working at finding different revenue funding streams for many years now. But what advice would you give to other councils to find those, and how have you yourselves been able to find out who you could approach maybe for that funding?
Okay. We only kind of really started, if we really drawing down funding about 6 or 7 years ago, if I'm honest. Before then, we wouldn't have. We would have just solely have said, look, we're a town community council, we have the precept, that's what we spend. But I think our attitude now has changed. We've had to asset transfer a lot of property, a lot of park areas over to us, and the precept purely, it doesn't cut it. So we have to draw down funding, and substantial funding as well, to make improvements and to invest in the community as well. So Carmarthenshire County Council up until recently had a very active what we call community bureau, and the community bureau, we had really good relationships with the officers. They would often give us funding advice on what funding was becoming available, when that was happening, etc. They've now taken over running SPF, and they no longer do that. But as colleagues in Cleley, we've got a really strong community development network, and what we tend to do is excuse me, bounce off each other. I have colleagues, Amber Daniels, who's in one of the teams that works for Carmarthenshire County Council. She sends out a monthly list to us, essentially, on what funding's on there. So I got that list actually this morning, and I will often sort of like look on there and see, you know, what's of interest, if there's anything of interest to us. But not only that, I'll look on there to see if there's interest, maybe if there's funds for sporting groups, for instance, and then I'll get Sean to send that out to the sporting groups so that they can access funding. If there's stuff on there for schools, I will forward that on to all of the head teachers, so they're aware that there's potential, isn't it, funding for schools, etc. So we have, if you can understand, a small funding network where we share information, etc., with each other. It isn't anything, if you can understand, it's just how it's been developed, I guess, over the last number of years, just by communicating and networking together. We have calves, obviously, in Carmarthenshire also as well. But to be honest with you, calves don't have a foothold in Llanelli, so we don't sort of like tend to rely so much on calves. So as an organisation, we tend to sort of like come together. And as part of my role working in the community, if I'm working in the schools, if I'm working with community organisations, you know, in any given day, this week I'm running the town council. We're running the town council for the next 2 weeks. So my boss, the clerk, Avon Davis, is off. So part of my role, if you can understand, is working in the community, but then also running the town council. So it can be quite difficult. But if I'm working with a small knitting group and I know they're only looking for a couple of £100,000, then, you know, sorry, not a couple of £100,000, couple of £100, then I can direct them, if you can understand, into certain key areas, and we can support that. If they're looking for lottery funding, for instance, we'll direct them to our colleagues in the lottery, for instance, and we can support those lottery applications, particularly the Awards for All applications also as well. So it's a bit of sort of, but the information that we do get from colleagues, we tend to share with each other also as well, and that we found that to be really quite successful in Llanelli.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Dalif. We have a question from Carol Roberts, and she asks how much officer time is spent on drawing up various size applications, and do members become involved? How did you create capacity to do this?
I'm going to start twitching at this stage. It's really, really difficult. Yeah, a lot of officer time, if I'm honest with you. It's myself and Avon Davis, who's the clerk, and also as well the financial sort of like background to that also as well. We have a principal officer, finance officer as well. So an element of his time, if you can understand, goes into preparing particularly the large scale applications. Do members get involved? Yes, they do. We have an officers working group with the members, and we call that the FGen working group, the Future Generations working group. So there are 11 out of our 22 councillors that sit on that working group. And if we're working on large scale applications, we will take that to the councillors. So they're fully aware, isn't it, of what we're doing. The other thing that myself and Sean Thomas, our sports officer, does actually is on a monthly basis. We are accountable to the members also as well. So we report right. So if I'm writing on an application, if I'm working on something, then I'll be advising the members that I'm doing that. And of course, then I'm accountable to in committee as well to them. So they do have an opportunity, the councillors do have an opportunity to shape some of the applications that we do submit. But if I'm honest with you, the councillors will generally leave it to us as officers. But in general, it's myself, the clerk, and Sean. Essentially, Sean will deal with all the sports ones, and then Avon and I will deal with the larger ones, and then the smaller ones get left to me. Essentially, that's how it kind of divvies up, I suppose.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's a lot of, if I'm honest, it's a lot of officer time.
Okay, but it's worth it, judging from the amount of funding you've received over the last 6 years, and obviously the benefit that that's produced for the community. It's worth the investment, definitely.
Well, I think Angela, the investment's been huge, and it's worth certainly worth our investment in time. And what we do find, particularly with working with Welsh Government, for instance, with the Community Facilities Programme, they've been very receptive to working with us. And I think that's because we're a town and community council. We're working on behalf of the community. So they've been, very good at sort of like working alongside us and seeing, what we can look at doing. And then, we've been lucky now, isn't it, that we've got a new £500,000 facility for the community, which has been amazing, and that's joining our portfolio of like I say, this will be the 6th community centre that we've got. But these are all things then that we can run at a loss for the community, that the community can access easily, that they can use, that they can utilise, for whatever they wish to do, isn't it? So, and I think that's largely a role in which we play within the community as well. So yeah, and I think it's fair to say in Carmarthenshire particularly, the local authority is withdrawing. There's lots of services which have been cut, but the town council in Llanelli is investing, and the community does see that. So I think that's important that we do that.
Most definitely. That's great, Dalith. Just a question for everyone today. So One Voice Wales, our team, the Cost of Living Crisis Project team, we regularly send out emails that are specific to certain areas. So we're quite proactive in finding out what funding might be available to various areas. So it'd just be interesting to know really if there's anyone here today who's seen those emails, and if so, off the back of those, if they've been able to apply for any funding and whether or not they've been successful. But we also publish a regular newsletter as well, which has numerous grants and funding opportunities that may be available for your council as well. In fact, one's only just gone out this week, so it's well worth checking out our Facebook page for when those come out. Usually, as I say, they're around every month or so, but they're also on our webpage as well. So if you want to have a look at the One Voice Wales website, they're on there as well. And I'm sure Vanessa will drop, yeah, there you go. Vanessa's just dropped the link there for the latest newsletter that we've just published. So yes, we'd love to hear if anyone's seen those, and if so, if they've had any success in applying for any funding there as well. So that's great, Dalith. Thank you. Does anyone have any further questions for Dalith? Again, if you want to raise your hands or maybe pop something in the chat. Okay, so I've actually got a question, Rachel, yourself. I was just sort of having a little think about something, and one of the questions I wanted to ask really is, if someone's unsuccessful in their application, do you give them any feedback on that application, and are they able to resubmit that application in the same guise, or do they have to slightly amend it, and is there a time lapse between when they can reapply, if that is?
Yeah, so any unsuccessful application will obviously have contact details in that letter with the funding officer to contact. It will have some feedback, some I'm not saying basic feedback, but have some feedback in there in terms of where the application could have been strengthened. Gives contact details for the funding officer involved in assessing that application. And we do recommend that they speak to that funding officer to get feedback verbally as well, not just go on what is within that letter. And we can sort of talk through that in a lot more detail. And yes, there's the opportunity then to reapply as long as they've addressed that feedback. Obviously, they need to go through the whole process again, medium or back to stage one if it's a two-stage application. So yeah, but they'll have feedback, have the opportunity to chat through how they've addressed it then with the funding officer going forward, and be able to reapply. And there is no time scale, so it isn't a case of you can't reapply for so many months. It might be a case of that, yes, they have already got the information to hand, but didn't provide it. So they can provide it, so it can be turned around fairly quickly, or it might be that they need to go out and do perhaps some more consultation with the community. But yeah, can reapply, no time frames, and they'd get verbal feedback as well from our funding officers.
That's great, because like you say, sometimes it could be something really simple that they're already doing as a council, but for whatever reason they didn't mention that on the application. So it's great to know that resource is there for the feedback, and obviously to be able to resubmit. That's great. Thanks, Rachel. Okay, so any more questions for any of our guest speakers this evening? Hopefully you've all found it useful. Maybe Thomas says she has to leave, but thank you all for your presentations. I must say they've all been really, really informative. Lots of information, lots of behind the scene insights as well, which it has been great to be able to share with everyone in attendance here this evening as well. And please do, if anyone does have any further questions that come about after this event, then please do get in touch, as Rachel says, with the lottery funders, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to answer those Emma again says, a great session. Thanks to all the presenters and attendees. So thanks then. So if there's no further questions, I just wanted to say that, you know, we hope today you leave the session feeling a lot more confident now and equipped to take your next steps into securing funding. And as we've heard, you know, this sort of funding can achieve some fantastic initiatives that add, you know, a tremendous benefit to your communities, especially in the current climate. You know, there's a lot of people out there who can definitely benefit from some of the initiatives, some of the projects that are going on at the moment. We ourselves have seen evidence of that during our time working on this project ourselves. So if there's no more questions, I'll close today's session, but I just really wanted to once again thank all of our guest speakers, Rachel, Kerry, Delith, and of course your contributions there too, Carrie. They've all been really, really informative, lots of information, lots of details, and I'm sure lots of things for councils to follow up on as well to hopefully secure some funding for their councils too. We will, of course, be sharing any resources from today's presentation. So if anyone's missed anything or obviously wants to follow up, then that will be available to you. And there will also be a recording of the webinar available at some point too. So again, if you've joined us late or had to leave early, or if you think there's colleagues out there who may also benefit from the information we've shared this evening, then do feel free to pass those on. So I think I'll leave it there this evening. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And we'd love to see you at our next event. Thank you.